Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins have both agreed that he will be traded, and now the Chargers have a chance to add an all-pro to a room that already has two up-and-coming stars.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, Derwin James' old teammate Jalen Ramsey seems to be available on the trade block, and man, that would be pretty cool to see those two guys line up with each other on Sundays. So we're going to talk about that, talk about the prospects of that possibly happening for the Chargers, and then we're going to talk about Daiyan Henley. Daiyan Henley last year was fantastic, and it makes it even better knowing that he did all of that with a torn up shoulder for most of the season. He definitely has another ceiling that he can get to, and then we're going to close things out by talking about the visit with Georgia edge Chaz Chambliss.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing the Chargers visit with someone who's going to be, a day 3 pick, maybe even not drafted at all, but I think there's a very specific reason for that we'll get into. But a blockbuster kind of dropped, David, on Tuesday when it was announced by Ian Rappaport that Jalen Ramsey and the Dolphins have agreed to mutually explore trade options, and it wouldn't be a surprise if he played elsewhere in 2025, according to him and Tom Pelissero, which leads to the question, could the Chargers go and potentially try to trade for him? And I think the argument for doing it would be this. You have two young, up-and-coming, cheap corners in Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still. Now you have a chance to add an all-pro, and also you talk about a guy that still playing at a high level and with a coaching staff that should be able to maximize him, and with a culture that should be able to keep him in line. So I think if you're talking about why the Chargers would do it, or the argument for them doing it, I think there is one to be made.
Oh, of course. I mean, you get a guy the caliber of a Jalen Ramsey, who has been one of the top corners in the league since he pretty much stepped foot in the league almost 9 years ago. This is a true alpha, like Revis Island style of guy. When he's at the top of his game, he can shut down pretty much any wide receiver that's opposed from him. So bringing that type of guy with the attitude, because he has that type of attitude that you kind of like, obviously is a little edgy, right? I mean, there's parts of it where you might want it to be a little refined, but you get what you get. That's the type of alpha mentality that he brings to the table. And when he's on the field, he can make game-changing type plays.
Absolutely. And I think if you're talking about, how he would fit with the Chargers specifically, it would give you an outside corner to put opposite of Cam Hart, and then you could play Tarheeb Still in his natural position, which is in the slot. Now you have 3 guys you feel really good about, and the trickle-down effect of that, kind of like we talked about with Will Johnson yesterday, and the argument for going corner, even if it's not your biggest need, right? The trickle-down effect and how much that coverage can help your edge rushers and vice versa is obviously very important. And also, if you look, 8th best corner in the NFL with any corner that had at least 500 snaps last year. So obviously still playing at a top 10 level. The one bugaboo here, 12th highest missed tackle rate amongst the same corners too, at 19.4%. I hate that. I don't think Jesse Minter's going to like that, but obviously we talked about Will Johnson yesterday, who had a very similar problem. What I do think he would like, though, David, is his work as a blitzer. We know that Jesse Minter likes to blitz his corners. You could argue that nobody blitzed at that position better than Jalen Ramsey last year, and you'd have the stats to back it up. 12 pressures, which was first in the NFL last season. The next closest had 9. It wasn't even really that close. He also had a sack, and I know you'll love this, and we've seen a lot of this under the Jesse Minter scheme, 4 batted passes, which also led the league at that position too. So a guy that in a lot of ways, David, even though if you look at the numbers, better in man coverage than he is in zone coverage, and we know the Chargers run a lot of zone, but you trust Jesse Minter obviously to get the most out of him. But there are some reasons why you think, okay, he would like, he's still playing at a high level. He does things well that Jesse Minter uses in his defense, and then it just becomes, okay, but what is it going to cost? And I think that's kind of where the hang up comes here.
For sure. I mean, you look at the player on the field, and I know you touched on the missed tackle percentage, but that's also kind of out of the norm. 7 of his 9 seasons, he has a missed tackle percentage under 10%. So,
which is really good for a corner.
Traditionally,
really
he's pretty sound from that respect. So I don't know if last year is more of the rule than the exception. I think it's that
plenty of reason
to
think he's going to bounce back for sure. That's a great point.
100%. But when you're talking about what the detractors or the reasons why it probably would not happen is the money. I mean, he just signed an extension in 2024, basically right before the season started, the 3 years, over $70 million. And so if the Chargers were to trade for Jalen Ramsey, not only would they have to obviously provide compensation for that via a draft pick or a player, but they're going to have to take on his base salary, which is over $20 million. And I think that's the part where I think, considering the cap space that the Chargers have and more like effective cap space, which is what me and Daniel were talking about, you have to have money in the reserves for the draft picks. You gotta have that. That's just a part of it. And then of course the Chargers always like to have operating cash during the season. If in case anything happens, they can go out and get a player if they need to get a player. So I think with all of those things being mentioned, I think that's probably the biggest reason why it's a little bit hard to imagine that the Chargers would pull the trigger on a trade to acquire Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, like according to ESPN, they would have to take on basically everything that hasn't been paid to him so far this year as far as his guaranteed salary, which is around $24.3 million. And they already paid him $4 million. So it costs around $20 million. Could the Chargers make it happen? Yeah, right? Like you could extend Rashawn Slater, and that gets you to where you would need to be cap-wise. But it also kind of just goes against the philosophy we've seen the Chargers carry out this offseason, which is to keep the flexibility in the future intact, not make really aggressive win-now type of moves. I think if they made a move like this, because if they wanted to, they could make it work. If they really wanted to get him, they could do it. And I think the reason why it's not impossible is because I don't think it's going to cost very much draft capital wise.
Yeah.
Because of what that salary cap is, because of the limited amount of teams that are even going to be able to absorb that reasonably this year. And also just the fact that he has already cratered a lot of the trade value that he has because of putting it out this publicly and having it come out the way that it has. It's not going to cost much. It's probably going to cost a day 3 pick potentially for a great player. But the Chargers, if you're going to keep the cap space up to this point, you're doing it for a reason. You're doing it to potentially make a move like this, but maybe a lesser one that's not going to cost $20 million, but to be able to add somebody in a trade like that, an impact player. But this would tell you, okay, hey, if they're making this move, they feel maybe like they're closer than what the rest of their moves so far in the offseason has told us, right? So I don't think it would happen just because of those reasons. I think that you would get a good player. You don't have to draft a corner after that. You'd feel really good about that. It's one less thing you have to worry about going into the draft. And you'd feel good about having him to pair with your younger players and having a veteran in the room. But David, maybe Derwin James has something different to say about it, because it was only a couple years ago that Jalen Ramsey said that he and his former Florida State teammate would be reunited at some point.
Yeah, it's really funny, honestly. I was kind of just searching on social media, saw a video, and it was of Jalen Ramsey just basically saying, hey, one day Derwin James and I will play on the same team together. It's going to happen. Basically, take it to the bank, mark my words, was basically the tone of his voice when he was delivering that message. And hey, Derwin James, we already know, has some pull on this football team. If he likes somebody, if he wants to keep someone, then, it's going to be heard. That was what happened with Tony Jefferson, right? He basically told the Chargers, hey, I want to keep Tony. Tony allows me to kind of do what I want to be able to do. And so if he goes up to Joe Ortiz and Jim Harbaugh and says, hey, I think we should make this move. This is going to be a move that's going to help us go win a Super Bowl. Then I do feel like that is counsel that will be heard.
Yeah, and it's hard to say how much sway, Derwin has. We know that he's the face of this franchise as much as a defensive player can be and as much as a non-quarterback can be. Justin Herbert, because of his position, will always be considered one of the faces of this franchise. But Derwin, in the vocal sense, in the kind of public image sense, he is that guy for this team, and he's this team's biggest advocate, wherever he's speaking about it. So
no doubt,
he has some sway. That if it's up to him and if he has to take a little restructure to the contract, he would be willing to do it to make the numbers work. I don't think it's likely, but like I said, I think there's an argument for it, and the Chargers would be better with him in it. And I think that you would give your defense a true strength for Jesse Minter, a mastermind to work around with, which is a scary thing for opposing offenses. But we still have more to get into, including Chris Rim, recurring guest coming, and sitting down with another recurring guest, Daiyan Henley, and why Daiyan Henley thinks there's even another level to his game, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free and share it with your network and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach of qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. And that is really what sets LinkedIn apart. It's not just getting you candidates, it's getting you qualified candidates and finding the right person for the role, so you're not trying to go and fill it a couple months later because it didn't fit. Your ecosystem is so important. You want to make sure you find the right person for the job, and LinkedIn helps you do that. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Shout out to our friend Chris Rim over at ESPN, who covers the Chargers, for sitting down with one of our friends, Daiyan Henley, who was on here in the offseason talking about all the, free agents he was trying to recruit. And also just, his kind of turbulent but awesome story arc that he's had over his first couple seasons. I don't think there were many players we were happier for than Daiyan Henley for having sat his first whole season, basically, and then having the chance to get on the field and show it maybe only a fraction of how good he was in his second year, but how good he was tied for 7th in All-Pro voting as a second-year player, first-year starter, and he was great. He was undoubtedly one of the best pleasant surprises, in the words of John Clark, on the team last season.
Amen.
And seeing Chris Rim talk to him about it, I saw him post something about, like, my time still hasn't come yet, or something like that on Twitter. Yeah. I'm like, man, this dude, well, that was pretty good. Maybe you should be happy with that. But pretty good. It was interesting hearing Chris Rim talk with him and what he had to say about last season. And basically, he says he still doesn't think he's broken out yet. Daiyan Henley was awesome, but he basically feels like a torn labrum that he suffered in week 4 held him back. Seems to be pretty important to have an intact shoulder. But when talking with Chris Rim, he said basically that he had to go a couple of games and really struggle to play, and he really struggled up until the Arizona Cardinals game, where he really had a bad game, in his mind, his worst game. And then he adjusted it and took a risk for this team, David, by changing the harness that he had to wear. And I think shows a lot about his toughness, and also shows, man, like, if he was dealing with that since week 4 of last season and he still put together the season we saw from him, it's not that crazy to think that'll be even better in 2025.
Absolutely not. I mean, when you consider one of Daiyan Henley's best attributes is his ability in coverage. He is so natural at it, and that's extremely rare for a linebacker. I mean, you just do yourself a favor. Go on PFF and look at the receptions to target numbers for most of the linebackers in the NFL, and you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. They usually give up an extremely high percentage of their looks. Daiyan Henley does not fall in that category. Like he's just so good at it, and he's so, and him and Derwin did real damage limiting tight ends last year with their ability in coverage. But I had a torn labrum and a torn rotator cuff, and I had to have surgery on it. So I know from personal experience, it is impossible to raise your arms up almost above your head. So the fact that he was able to play an entire season and also be able to get an interception with that ailment just is a feather and a testament to his resilience, his absolute just crazy will and pain tolerance, because a real mortal man would not be able to withstand that amount of punishment and still perform at such an incredible level. you give back his range of motion, then watch out. I mean, the sky is the limit, and I agree with Daiyan. We have not scratched the surface to what he can accomplish in his career. I feel like the sky is the limit.
Yeah, and I mean, he realistically could have just shut it down when he suffered the torn labrum. That's such a hard position. They tried to do what they could, like I said, going into the Cardinals game. And after that, he said enough is enough. And this is from Chris Rim. They said I would have a much higher chance of dislocating my shoulder with the adjustments that I made after the Arizona Cardinals game. But at that point, I was like, bro, I'll take the risk. And if you look at my gameplay after Arizona, I went on a run. And this was something that surprised us. We didn't know about this during the season. It came out after, and we were just thinking, okay, well, he must have been healthy. Look how good he was. So to see the toughness, to see kind of the commitment to the team, to fight through that and show everyone a little piece of what he can do, you know is important to him, especially when you're reading through this Chris Rim article and you're realizing, David, just how much of a toll it took on him to have that rookie season that he had, where, I mean, if I'm him, it would be pretty hard to be sitting behind two dudes who you might be better than one of those guys, and you're still just riding the bench and not even getting a chance to shine.
I mean, based off of his performance last year and, like, honestly, what we saw in very short sample size, I mean, for me, it was clear he was better than both of those two guys.
Or seeing 4 years of Kenneth Murray,
I mean, still, shout out to his agent for the most ridiculous contract I've ever seen in my life. But, that wasn't a pleasant experience watching Kenneth Murray play linebacker, okay? It just wasn't. No. Now, for Daiyan, it was an extremely pleasant experience watching him play linebacker, but in his rookie year, he was really subject to the Brandon Staley favoritism, as we all know it to be. You know, he had his guys, he wanted to play his guys, and it didn't really matter who you are or how, you know, talented you would be are, right? I mean, we got to see one real opportunity of him in his rookie season where he racked up like a ridiculous 10 tackles in a very short period of time.
51 snaps.
Yeah, 51 snaps, which is just ridiculous. So we saw it right away, and if we saw it, we know other people saw it, but he never got that chance. He was relegated to being a special teamer, and I feel like he took that personally. And the way he came out and played his sophomore season, I think it was definitely clear that he did.
Well, he basically said he was embarrassed. He said, you know, I chased this dream so long to be here from outside looking in. That probably seemed like it was enough just making it to the NFL. But that wasn't my end all be all to be a special teamer. So that's where my embarrassment was. But it was also my interior motivation to go and do what we saw him do this year. But I mean, I just remember so many 3rd and longs with Kenneth Murray and Eric Kendricks on the field, neither guy who specialized in coverage, knowing you have a dude that led the league in pass breakups last year sitting on your bench. And we all know Brandon Staley did not tell Daiyan Henley happy birthday, which he, you know, if you haven't watched the Daiyan Henley interview we did earlier this year, go back and watch it. It's maybe our best interview we've ever done with a player. But like, it must have been so infuriating. And I think that's one of the things you love so much about this new regime is the belief that the best players will play. Because as much as everyone says that, that's not the case. It's not even, I think, probably in most locker rooms the case, right? There's always going to be favorites and things like that are being played in the locker room, the office politics of it all. This dude's play spoke for itself, and that's why he was, you know, a top 10 linebacker in 2024. And I think that hearing this makes me even more excited to see what he can do when he says, ultimately, I'm telling myself right now, you haven't done anything yet. And that right there motivates me. So that's where I'm at mentally. I feel like I still haven't had my moment yet. So to have the breakout year he had and to still be hungry for more, David, I think is what could make him a special player.
100%. And the great ones have this mentality. They have the work's not finished type of mentality, right? That Kobe Mamba mentality where you got to go put the work in and you haven't arrived. You haven't done anything. A new year, a new opportunity, a new chance to go show what you're capable of. And I think that's what continues to make you be curious to see how good you can actually be. You can't ever rest on your laurels. You have to continue to get better and strive to go be your best. And me personally, I see Daiyan Henley with all pro potential. That's what I see in his future. I feel like if he's on the football field, he will achieve that.
Yeah, especially with a couple guys who are older in the tooth or longer in the tooth. And Levante David's not going to be around that much longer. Bobby Wagner's not going to be around too much longer. I think he absolutely could crack that threshold, you know, and I think he could absolutely do it. Not only that, I think he could probably lead the league in interceptions, especially seeing that the leader last year had 3 interceptions at the position. It would not shock me at all if Daiyan Henley led the league in interceptions in one of these upcoming seasons.
Not
And
at all.
I'm so excited to see what he can do, because he had the 8th most tackles in the NFL last year, and he had a shredded shoulder since week 4 and on.
Wild.
So excited that he can go into this offseason and, this upcoming season, knowing his spot, knowing that he's earned being one of the best players on this team and a full-time starter at linebacker in the future of that position for this team, and what Navarro Bowman can do with these boys in year 2 as well under him. But we still have more to get into, because the Chargers made some news visiting with an edge rusher that I had never heard of, but I think there is a very specific reason why they had a visit with Georgia edge rusher Chaz Chambliss, and we're going to talk about that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into the player prompts, which I love. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props, including this weekend for the upcoming Lakers game, Game 1, Lakers, Timberwolves. It should be a great series, and right now the Lakers are favored by 4.5 points going into Game 1. It's at home. But the other parts I love are the player props. For that game, you could go with Luka Doncic going over 37.5 points and assists put together, or LeBron at 32.5 combined points and assists. And there's so many other ways. Like, truly, if you want to bet on it, you can do it at FanDuel. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. David, we have another official meeting that the Chargers took with a potential draft prospect. And as we know with the Chargers, that doesn't always mean they're going to take them. But I think it is a little different in this regime with Jim Harbaugh and company too, because we saw them take a meeting with Junior Colson last year, even knowing what they knew about him. And there's so many reasons why teams will meet with players, which is going to be one of the focuses of what we're talking about today. But thank you to the fans, as always, for making us your first listen. If you need a second listen, it's crunch time now, and your second listen should definitely be the Locked On NFL Draft with our guy Damian Parson, who did a great job on this show, along with Keith Sanchez, as they get you ready for the draft, which starts next Thursday. So make sure you guys check them out on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. But David, according to Jordan Schultz, sources say Georgia linebacker Chaz Chambliss is visiting the Chargers today and tomorrow. He's also met with the Lions, Falcons, and had a private workout with the Saints. Chambliss was tied for the team lead at Georgia with 6.5 sacks this past season. When I saw that, I was like, okay, Chargers need an edge rusher. Taking a Georgia edge rusher has worked out for a lot of teams for a lot of years. But at the same time, I was not expecting it to be the 37th ranked edge rusher on Dane Brugler's board, and also the 4th highest graded edge rusher on Georgia going into the draft this year. So a little surprising. This is someone that, Dane Brugler has as a priority undrafted free agent who might not even get drafted. But David, I don't necessarily think this is going to be the guy the Chargers would try to have a visit with to be the potential heir apparent to someone like, a Khalil Mack.
No, absolutely not. I think this is definitely somebody that they maybe see some traits in, see some ability in, see a way to impact a football team. And me personally, when I was watching him, the first thing that kind of popped in my mind was this guy is going to be a demon on special teams. I feel like this is a guy who's going to really make, like a lot of other, players that are on the, back end of the depth chart of the position group that they're in. If you want to play in the NFL, you're going to have to make your bones on special teams. And I think the way that this guy runs, the way he's able to kind of sift through traffic from time to time, I feel like would make him a quality core 4 special teams player.
Yeah, at least have the potential to. You'd have to think, there's plenty of reasons. I think when you see something like this and you realize the caliber of player that we're talking about, them having a meeting with, you'd be like, well, why would they use a meeting on that? Even if it, it's an undrafted free agent. It just shows you that the teams take these meetings for lots of different reasons. It could be an injury thing they're worried about. It could be a character thing that they're worried about. There's a lot of different reasons, and it's not always just going to be the top flight prospects that get these type of visits. And I think you're totally right about him as a potential special teamer. This is what Dane Brugler had to say. His ticket to an NFL roster will be as a special teams ace. And it definitely seems like when you look at kind of his ability to tackle, his kind of motor that he plays with, I think those are all things that lead to you being a very good special teamer. But I mean, let's be honest, 6.5 sacks is not something to sneeze at. He played on a very talented defensive line at Georgia. Not just this year, with the guys that are going to be drafted this year, but he also played along a guy named, Trayvon Walker, played alongside a guy named Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. Like all these, like there's so many guys he's played with. It's not hard to see why that he was kind of out of the spotlight there, David.
Sure.
But like there are some parts to his game I actually really liked.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, hey, 14 games, 40 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, like 6.5 sacks that's pretty quality production from a rotational edge defender. Like that's quality. That's quality stuff there. I feel like he showed some good hand usage to at least break away from tackles when he was trying to get around the edge when he had those opportunities. He played with good effort, and when he played with proper leverage, he was able to disengage and make tackles. Again, key on when he used proper leverage. I mean, I think that's a big part of it for him. He's a very sure tackler, though. Only 4.7 missed tackle percentage.
That's crazy.
Is fantastic. When he's able to wrap up and he's able to engage, most of the time he's getting that person on the ground. As far as some of the things that, he needs to work on, obviously, or, some of the detractors, he doesn't have the size or the length that you look for, for an NFL edge rusher. He struggles to get off of blocks. Sometimes, even with tight ends, like your bigger tight ends, and also your offensive lineman, he tends to kind of get washed away, if he gets engulfed. And he just doesn't possess a whole lot of power from what I saw from the games that I watched.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason, right? He's projected to potentially not even get drafted. Like, and the Chargers, obviously, with 4 or 6 round picks, could decide, this is a guy that might be in play for one of those. But yeah, 31 and 3/8 inch arms, 6'2", 245 pounds. We've seen some smaller edge rushers. They don't usually come in that package. Honestly, when I was watching the film, kind of popped in my mind, maybe they think of him more as an off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
Just because physically, that's what he looks more like. And when you think about what he does well, I think those things definitely fit with what you would like as an off-ball linebacker. The Chargers obviously have a few of those guys already, but they do kind of need that long-term Nick Neiman type of, linebacker that will mainly be a special teams guy for you. But if you need him in a pinch, can go in there and give you a couple snaps. Like the guy played with physicality, he gave it his all. I mean, he has the toughness for it. He has the motor, lots of plays where he was chasing someone down. But there's a reason why this guy, isn't thought of as someone that, is a day 2 or early day 3 pick. And it's because of a lot of these reasons. Now, you can still find value in those players, and good NFL players comes in all shapes and sizes. And as the Chargers saw last year, 2 guys that they picked in the 5th round both came in and played great snaps for them. You never know where you're going to get those contributors, and the Chargers have a long history of undrafted free agents that have carved out long careers for themselves. But at the same time, I wouldn't take this in a way that, means the Chargers are kind of only targeting day 3 for an edge rusher. They still need that heir apparent to Khalil Mack. And as I told you, this is not the guy that's going to step into those shoes. But I think the thing is kind of just with more pressing needs at wide receiver, tight end, interior offensive line, defensive line, running back, it's really kind of unclear where they could take that edge rusher, but I'd still be surprised if they were waiting to get a priority undrafted free agent or waiting till round 6 or 7 maybe to get that guy.
Yeah, I don't see that either. I mean, we don't know what the Chargers hierarchy of needs are based off of their
in the building,
their football team in the building, right? We don't know what that is, but yeah, I would be hard pressed to believe that they're not going to take an edge rusher, before probably the 5th round. I feel pretty confident that they will do that because, hey, the fact of the matter is, Khalil Mack is on a 1-year contract, and he contemplated retiring before this upcoming season. So, we know that took some convincing. So they have to plan for life after Khalil Mack. You don't want to be put in a position where you have to address a certain position because we know the draft just doesn't always work out the way you want it to.
No, and that's the hard thing, though, right? Is like if the Chargers take an edge rusher in round 3, that means that one of those positions isn't going to be addressed until day 3, right? So, like, if they take an edge rusher, rounds 1, 2, or 3, and they took a wide receiver and an interior offensive lineman, let's say, right? That means you're waiting till day 3 to get a tight end. That means you're waiting till day 3 to get a running back. You're waiting till day 3 to find that guy in the interior. So, I think that kind of just shows you it's not that easy to find all these guys. One of the other reasons you're talking about Jalen Ramsey, okay, well, at least you wouldn't have to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good teams prepare themselves for the eventual, stars leaving and guys having to get paid, like you saw with the Eagles and the exodus of good players that they had there this year, just because if you have so many good players and you're winning Super Bowls, you're not going to be able to keep everyone. But the good teams plan for it. So to take an edge, a little earlier. Don't be surprised if they do, because they're trying to plan for that. Maybe they think they can get away with tight end for another year with the guys they have in that room. If they feel like they can get away with having, Najee Harris and not premier other high draft capital type of players to go alongside him. So there's going to be positions we wish they spent premium resources on, but they don't have enough picks right now to spend premium resources and all the things we think, all the places we feel like they have big needs. So that's just kind of how it is. And maybe it comes down to you getting a guy like this and just trying to kind of find a specialized players later on in the draft to fill more kind of niche needs that you have as a team, and just try to build as solid of a team depth-wise, special teams-wise, in all facets as you can. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Tomorrow, we're getting into the top receivers in the draft class, because the Chargers have officially met with not just Tet McMillan, but we found out on Tuesday also Matthew Golden, a guy that David really liked. So we're going to talk about that and maybe other really good options the Chargers could have if they trade back in round 1, if they decide till day 2, Jalen Royal, Jaden Higgins. We haven't talked about Emeka Egbuka yet. Maybe we get into this a little bit of him. I know there's some Luther Burden stands out there, and we want the Chargers to get a weapon and get a weapon early. So when we talk about some of those guys tomorrow, just the news that, hey, the Chargers are showing interest in these top receivers. Maybe it is an option at 22. But until then, guys, to make sure you don't miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding us every day on all of our social media, where you can also hit us up at all these places for a Fan Mail Friday coming up as well, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you guys want to get a voicemail onto the show, give us a 30-second voicemail at 323-524-7924, and we will try to get you guys on the show. But excited to talk about some more weapons tomorrow and some of the top receivers in this upcoming draft class. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.